Hey, everybody, welcome to What the Flick. Alonso, Bibbs, Kim, Preacher. Season 1, Episode 1, cleverly titled Pilot.
And there is a pilot in the episode.
Oh, good point.
Yeah, maybe he was more important than at first we realized.
He gets an axe right in the sternum.
Yeah, so it works out.
So really the show's about him.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've never read the comic books. I know they are challenging and dark.
It's a Vertigo comic.
It's a Vertigo, exactly,
Yeah.
yes. It's definitely not for kids, and neither is the show.
But Preacher, the comic book, went above and beyond. It was created by Garth Ennis, who is anything but like a mild comic book writer. He will push the boundaries any way he can, sometimes to brilliant effect, sometimes not. And of course, it was also co-created by Steve Dillon, who did the amazing artwork. And when Preacher came out, it was so controversial, so bizarre, so strange, so outre, that honestly, for a while, people were just reading it. It was kind of like Howard Stern, what's he going to do next? And then it was only after a few issues that you realized, this is actually really intelligent commentary about religion.
Was it controversial because of the religion aspect or more like the hyper-violence? I did like the action scenes, or fight scenes, by the way.
It was combining those elements. You know, the idea that we're not just going to do a religious comic book, but we're also going to do a religious comic book with profane amounts of sex and violence and concepts. There have been so many articles. I mean, you could Google it. Just the weirdest stuff that's ever happened in Preacher. You might run into some spoilers for the show, but you'll look forward to these moments on the show because they're insane.
Well, predictably, I got an email this morning from some publicist for some conservative website that's complaining about how this show, bashes Christians and bashes Texas and, is politically correct and blah, 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 blah. And I'm
the word politically correct.
I know. What does that even mean in this context?
Like it means
exactly.
something different from you think it means.
Usually, I think it's become the catch-all of like, you disagree with me.
I don't like the things you say.
Yes.
Politically correct. USJW.
Well, to be fair, I think I'm the only one who's read the comics, right?
I haven't read it
Of
yet.
this group, yes.
Okay, fine. The show, the comic book makes firm statements about the nature of religion and God and sainthood and everything. But those statements are very much not what you read in the Bible, and they are fascinating, and I think they're dramatically sound. But if you firmly believe in the teachings of Christ, Cathol, whoever, you're going to watch the show and we go like, well, that's not right. That's not an accurate portrayal at all.
Do we think that the show is going to be as interested in that stuff as in the profane amounts of sex and violence?
I would hope it is. Otherwise, it's a wasted opportunity. You can do profane amounts of sex and violence without commentary all the time. Why bother making Preacher if you're not going to shy away from the thing that makes Preacher worth adapting in the first place?
Okay, then, because I guess my question is, do you think this pilot delved into those areas as well as deeply as they might have?
Well, Preacher starts off kind of slow. In the comic book, it's all about Jesse Custer becoming completely basically so disappointed in his parish, and he knows all of their secrets, knows all of their sins, and he considers them just a bunch of hypocrites. And then the power of God comes into him, and if memory serves, he kills them all by accident. But but that doesn't happen in the show. And here, they've confirmed that the first season is going to take place entirely in Texas, whereas the comic book, about 6 to 8 issues, something like that, it started globetrotting real fast. So it's clear that we're digging in. We're meeting this group of people and talking about their relationship to not only our preacher, Jesse Custer, but also God and the church. Here's a guy who we see, he beats his wife, he beats his kid, still goes to church every Sunday, even after the preacher breaks his arm. Still goes to church. Talks about what does that say about the relationship between the way these people actually live in this show, again, specific context, and their relationship to God. There's a really telling moment in this episode where Jesse Custer meets Eugene, better known in the comics as Arseface. And Eugene talks about how he's praying to God and he can't hear God.
I was going to ask about that because it seemed later like Jesse was expecting to hear something in the church. Is that an element
that is foreshadowing?
That we can expect?
That's important. It's kind of the central premise of the comic book, but if you're watching the show and you're kind of curious where this is going, I don't really feel like we need to get into it right now. Suffice it to say, the idea that God isn't answering people's prayers is a significant idea.
So are we meant to take then that he has somehow received the power of God when he tells that guy, open your heart, and he takes it all that literally?
Yeah, basically he's the purple man from Jessica
Well,
Jones.
I understood it was some kind of entity that was choosing religious leaders, and he was the first worthy one. Is that right?
Kinda, yeah. I mean, they went into a little bit more detail about it going to different religious leaders in the show than, if memory serves, they did in the book. I haven't read it super recently, so if I'm getting that, forgive me. But yeah, no, I kind of just don't want to know how much I want to give away. If this is
please don't.
supposed.
Don't
Suffice
spoil
it to
for
say,
them either.
God is
right.
not in
Well,
Jesse
okay,
Custer,
so
but
let's-
Jesse Custer does have the power of a god.
All right.
Okay.
Well, let's talk about then what does happen. We have an African minister, a Christian minister, in getting possessed and exploded by some sort of meteor.
Yeah.
In Britain, I guess it's this. We're meant to take it as a Satanist church, right, with the big pentagram on the door.
I think I got a little hazy on that, honestly. I think I might have missed that detail. yeah.
When they close the doors, there's like a giant pentagram and like a goat head. So
I didn't
Yeah.
get that, but
assumed that
okay.
meant it was a
Yeah.
Satanist church. Tom Cruise explodes at a Scientology thing. You were saying the Team Cruise was not amused, but you know.
His people were reportedly not happy with that, but I think they should be happy because this show posits that this is a
Valid
legitimate,
religion.
valid religion,
So there you
according
go.
to whatever thing that was.
As rife for satire as anything else that Preacher is going to basically knock down with a hacksaw. Hard to do
I'm
with a
into it.
hacksaw. I was thinking more of an axe.
It's unraveling so slowly. I was irritated at first, but I think it's intriguing. I mean, like who these characters are, where they came from, what their relationship is
We know
together.
that Jesse has a past that involves being a bad dude. I'm led to assume that he killed his own father
I thought he
under
was
his father's
being
request.
held under hostage or something, as some other man killed Jesse's father.
I think that's the implication we're supposed to get. That's
Oh.
something, obviously, we'll see more of that
Okay,
flashback later.
my
and I wanna
read
talk
was that
about.
he shot the father
and he said,
under the
"Promise
father's.
me that you'll do this and
Yeah,
that."
and don't cry, and yeah. Well, we'll see. That's obviously this is definitely one of those pilots that gives you a lot of threads that they're going to sort of, weave
Eventually.
out later on as they see fit. We meet Tulip, who is apparently Jesse's former accomplice, and that whole farm sequence I thought was genius.
So great, and that's not in the books either. That's in the book. In the
That's all
books,
new?
in the books, Tulip kind of just like a bunch of guys like drive up to her and like proposition her, and then she like shoots one of them in the head, and it's still kind of extreme and crazy. But the show is so much more insane, and that's actually kind of a great moment for fans, I think, of the comic, to know that the show isn't necessarily going to just be different. It might actually improve on stuff, and it might actually be crazier than what Garth Ennis came up with, which is hard to
I mean,
imagine.
that's a hell of a character intro. Just
so great.
between the car going through the corn and the like getting the kids to help her build a bazooka and hiding them in the shelter and all that. I loved all that stuff. I thought that was great.
It was great, and then Cassidy gets an even more dramatic introduction
love
now than
that.
we did before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know what he was. I was just like, "What's going on? Is he a demon?" Oh, I get it. After a while, but
Yeah.
Yeah, I assume when they attempted to dump holy water on his head to no avail, demon.
yeah, the
okay.
vampire rules are interesting. It seems like each movie or TV show has different vampire rules.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
Is he a
could-
vampire?
he is a vampire.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought
He's
he was a
vampire.
demon. Okay.
No, he's totally a vampire, and it's
I didn't know
you're right.
vampires can live on cow blood. All right.
They sometimes they
Okay.
can,
He
He
sometimes
can be in
they
the
can't.
sun, kinda.
That's kind of the thing. Anytime you do a vampire movie or a werewolf movie or anything where there's some sort of pre-established rules, but it's fictional, you get to kind of put your own stamp on it. Sometimes silver works on a vampire, sometimes it does not, etc. We'll figure that thing out over time.
In the original Howard the Duck comics, actually, a vampire bites a cow, and the cow becomes a vampire.
That was a good storyline.
Yes.
I remember that very, very
I
well.
want somebody to make that movie.
I think there was an episode of The Real Ghostbusters where vampires were fighting werewolves and they kept biting each other and becoming vampire werewolves.
Ah.
And that was really cool.
Isn't that what most of the underworld movies are about?
It's just the one guy from Felicity, but yeah.
Oh, right. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, so we meet Tulip, who is played by Ethiopian-born British/Irish raised actress Ruth Negga. Do not be surprised to see her up for an Oscar this year. She plays Mildred Loving in Jeff Nichols' new film about the Loving v. Virginia case, and that just premiered at the Cannes Film Festival, and she's gotten great reviews. So keep an eye on this woman. She's going to have a good year.
Yes.
All right. So then Cassidy, the guy that he beats the crap out of, Arseface. What else are we covering here?
There's the organist.
Oh yeah, the organist
Oh right, yes.
is kind of a new character. We haven't really, met her from the comics, or if she was in the comics, she's a much more minor role. Again, there's a sense that we're really settling in to spend some real time in Texas, because seriously, Texas was the first story arc of Preacher, and then they just immediately went globetrotting, went
I'm a
just all
little
over the place.
worried about Texas if you told me that it resulted in people getting blown up.
Well, we'll see. It really is like right at the beginning of the comic. But like we're really, we're introducing a character who is, from a plot perspective, she's a rival for Jesse's affections with Tulip, but she's also someone pulling him into a more conventionally wholesome moral path.
Well, yeah, but if he's torn between these two lives, then I think those two women sort of symbolize those lives or those choices.
And what I also think is interesting is the way that Cassidy, who really has no reason to stay, has decided to take up residence in the church and actually, like, I guess, become their super. They said he fixed the air conditioner.
Yeah, he's their Schneider.
Yeah, kind of like. So that's sort of interesting, and I'm kind of curious to see how they're going to play him off of all these characters who really he has no reason to interact with for any other. At any other time. That's going to be fun to see that actually explored in this version, I think.
It was weird how at the bar fight, Cassidy got in trouble, but I don't think did he hit anyone?
No, he just pushed
just
that
stood
chair.
Yeah. No, but he's a foreigner. He's a foreigner. He's
And immediately suspect.
the
Yeah.
sheriff is obviously a douche. Like the sheriff obviously has a lot going on that he completely just sucks at, and yet he has this totally humanizing element, which is a son who tried to kill himself, and that he's now taking care of as best he can.
It sounds like Cassidy is being sort of abandoned by whoever his
his
controllers or his people are. So it may just be that if he is stuck there with no money and no means of transportation, that's why he's there.
Yeah.
Although
maybe
obviously
Okay,
if he's a vampire, he'd have
He's
other
just writing
choices,
it
I
out
would think.
until he gets money or whatever.
What I think is interesting about Cassidy is that he is obviously such a likable character. Like, you'd meet him in a bar and you'd have a great time hanging out with Cassidy. And yet, he's a monster. And I don't mean like he's like, oh no, it's True Blood, vampires, or maybe they're really, really not. No, Cassidy is a monster, but we like him anyway because it seems like he'd be nice to us. That's the fantasy, that we'd be cool with Cassidy. So I always think it's interesting to see Cassidy in a comic book or whatever like that, because that really does make it seem like he could do anything at any given moment. And that's really kind of interesting. He could be very endearing or he could be absolutely horrifying to you.
Explain this to me. And I don't know if this is just me being dumb or just not having read the comic book. What are we meant to make of the Bible that he finds?
Oh, with the writing all over it?
With the writing all over
I thought that was like this sect. Maybe the two people we saw walking in Africa and walking in Texas too. They seem to be like some kind of religious CIA group. I don't know what to describe
Oh,
it.
well, yeah,
Is it that?
the pith helmet
Bibs,
guys in Africa, and then are they the same? Are
The
they?
two- were
Is
those
that
the
also
same
the
two
teabag
guys?
eater in Texas? I don't know.
That's what I thought.
We
I
don't
think-
really see their faces in Africa because they've got the hats on and the
I
Banana
think-
Republic outfit.
I don't know how closely related they are to the gentleman on the plane, but if I was paying attention, if this is what I thought it was, the idea was that Cassidy was hired to be a bartender on an airplane, only to discover when he goes to the bathroom that the airplane was owned by religious extremists who are very, very, I mean, they're not so anti that they won't, deface a Bible, but like they're very extreme.
Right.
And so he's just like, well, I probably would here for a reason. This is bad. I'd better shove a bottle into someone's chest.
So there's like an underground of religious enforcers somehow in the show?
I don't know yet, honestly.
Demon
'cause there's-
hunters? We'll see.
There's a
kind of
lot of different
interested in
sects and ideas and different religious groups that have shown up at various times throughout the comic book. But it's hard to say because they are making some big changes. Which one necessarily we're meeting now? They could introduce new ones. I mean, heaven
Let's
knows.
just let the show be the show.
I think we should let the show be the
is
show.
Is the
Well,
message
at least
here.
it's intriguing enough that I want to know these answers.
Well, and I think
Yes.
I think it's worth pointing out that although the comic is a classic and it has been read and reread over and over and over again, I believe it's still in publication, not just because the show came out, but because it's just good. It ended years and years and years ago, and there is a lot of material, like since its final issue, in the real world that relates to Preacher and can be explored. The ideas of religious extremism and different the ways that different beliefs in religion have evolved over time in America and abroad. And I think it would be, again, a missed opportunity if the show didn't at least try to touch upon some of those things. So we're going to run into stuff, I hope, that isn't necessarily in the book and it actually can go in a new direction.
And you're saying that we can already tell from the pilot that they're not committed to doing the book verbatim.
No, this isn't Frank Miller's Sin City, and I'm so glad because parts of Preacher would work great like that, and parts of it would be absolutely insufferable. Like, I don't think it would work if you did it straight. It might be interesting, and may not suck, but there's some big dramatic chances that Garth Ennis and Steve Dillon took in the series that I think in a serialized format on TV wouldn't be as engaging as what we're getting now.
Gotcha. All right. Well, Preacher will be back in 2 weeks, and so will we, along with ideally Francis and Meredith will be, coming in and out as whoever can make it on a Monday. We have a deep bench on this one, as we did with Daredevil, to make sure that we don't miss a trick. So, all right, catch you guys next time.